everybody. Welcome to the Clever Roots seminars today on all things culinary cannabis. We're going to kick things off with an in-depth education on cannabis beverages. This is a very exciting category that maybe some people don't even know exists. So we have nobody better than the Cannabis Beverage Association's president, Diana Eberlein, here to teach us about this category and help us learn more about the work she does with Source, which powers some of these incredible infusions in these products. So please join us over here as we dive right in, and welcome, Diana. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Rachel. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to dive into this topic because this is a very important category. It's new-ish. People have been making and drinking cannabis beverages for centuries, but in their modern form factor where you can just pop open a can and get an ice cold, perfectly emulsified version of your favorite cannabinoid blend, that's pretty new.
It is pretty new. I answer the question of what is a cannabis beverage more often than I'd like to admit, and that's because that's typically not what people think of when they think of cannabis.
Totally, and people, as I said, don't know that these are a thing. So they're totally a thing. You guys are drinking some of those yummy CBD slushies, and let's dive into this exploring of this category. Okay, so let's start with the most important question, Diana. What are cannabis beverages?
Considering I just admitted that I answer this question more often than I admit, you'd think I'd have an elevator pitch at this point. But essentially, this is just another functional beverage. We're used to drinking collagen and protein and all sorts of things in beverages. Why wouldn't another functional ingredient, cannabis, be considered that? So essentially what you're having right now is a mixed beverage here with CBD, but if you go to a dispensary or if you go to some of your local shops, you can get a ready-to-drink CBD beverage or a THC beverage. And this is, a different experience than your traditional edible. And I think anyone who's had edibles in the past likely has had at least one bad one.
Yeah.
And beverages is an opportunity to really mitigate making that let's say 3-4 hour commitment that you can have from a bad edible, if you will.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into what really makes that possible. So I guess another important thing to understand as we're looking at cannabis beverages is that this covers every category of beverage that you think about as something you would drink as a consumer of a regular beverage.
Yep.
So we've got sodas, we've got teas, we've got sparkling waters, we've got stilled waters, we have coffee.
Yeah.
There's
I've seen
RTDs, kombucha.
Yeah, you're seeing all sorts of platforms, there's something for everyone here, whether it's coffee or tea, like you mentioned. People are drinking that in the morning, they're microdosing. There's sodas, there's non-alcoholic beers that now have THC or CBD and other cannabinoids in them, or terpenes just for the flavor profile and the sensory aspect. So there's, depending on what you like to drink, you can find one that fits that flavor profile. You don't have to force yourself into liking apple cider if you don't. There's going to be other options.
There is. And so if you're a soda drinker, you can get an infused soda. And what's even better is you can get them at any dose, because these products and brands that are coming out recognize that not every consumer wants 100 milligrams of something. Some people might want 2.5, some people might want 5 to 10. So having a wide variety of doses available and also cannabinoid ratios. What does that look like in cannabis beverages?
It varies right now, and it's really based on the demand from the consumer. So we are seeing a lot more interest in other minor cannabinoids. Obviously, CBD and THC are the most well-known, so there's still an educational barrier for the other minor cannabinoids with some consumers, just because this is new to them. Yeah. They're still getting used to the basics. But if you're familiar with Cann, which I think is arguably the most famous cannabis beverage out there, they're a 2-to-1 ratio. They have 4 milligrams of CBD to 2 milligrams of their THC. That makes the consumer feel that is a very approachable product because there's more CBD, the non-intoxicating cannabinoid, than there is THC. So anyone who's curious about cannabis but isn't sure where to start, we always say start slow and low, and that's a really great product for that.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of low-dose beverages out there, and we're going to get into some of the science of what makes these work so effectively. Here we go. Okay, so what are the effects that are specific and unique to beverages, and how do they work, Diana?
Yeah, so with beverages, what's really important to understand is, and like I mentioned in the beginning, this is not your traditional edible. Edible is produced with an oil-based ingredient. Oil takes a while for your body to break down. It has to be emulsified in the liver and then digested. That's why you have the delayed onset. With beverage, we've skipped that step. We are making the active ingredient water soluble. So your body is going to recognize it as if it were water. And what happens there is it doesn't have to be emulsified in the liver. It bypasses the liver and is immediately ingested through your intestinal tract. That means the onset, if you're having an intoxicating beverage with THC, the psychoactive cannabinoid, you're going to feel that onset within 7, 10, 15 minutes. What's also nice is that this is a consistent offset as well. So instead of your old school edible that everyone had in college, that brownie or cookie, where the onset was at an hour, maybe longer, and the offset was maybe 3 hours later, you're only committing to about an hour.
Yeah.
So this is what makes these low-dose beverages in particular extremely sessionable. And that, I think, is what makes this category in particular so approachable for someone who hasn't been consuming cannabis. I mean, I didn't consume cannabis until I was in my early 30s. And now I understand that it was because I didn't understand how to use this product effectively for my life and my needs. And beverage allows you to experiment with how you can apply it. Again, coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon, whatever that might be, there's applications that you can apply throughout your day.
Well, that's what's so exciting about the beverage category broadly is that we all consume beverages throughout the day. Beverages are really a cornerstone of connection for humans in so many ways, like cheers, here we go, let's raise a glass to that. It's very much a cultural thing, but it also is something that can be inserted, and if you find the right cannabinoid ratio, maybe you don't want to start with THC in the morning, maybe you want to have a CBD coffee, or maybe you want to have a terpene whipped cream from our friend Randy over there. He did an amazing job. There are a lot of different ways you can incorporate that throughout the day. So
like you were saying, from the moment you wake up in the morning till you go to bed, you have a beverage within probably 3 feet of you. I mean, most people...
I'm a multiple beverage girl. I always have like 4.
Yes, me too. And I'll switch throughout Zoom calls. People were like, I thought you were drinking a Diet Coke. I'm like, no, but this is my CBD beverage I also have open. And then here's my kombucha. Yeah. So it's like I always have kind of a mix of my favorite beverages. But we need water. We need beverage to literally survive. You don't need to smoke a plant, vape something. That isn't necessarily part of everyone's routine the way beverage and water consumption is. So that's a huge differentiator between this category of cannabis and other verticals. I guess the other thing I would say is it's just so approachable. Yeah. We are so used to drinking functional beverages now. I mean, whether it's a 5-hour energy shot where you're looking for the caffeine boost, or it's a beverage with collagen that we're using for our skin, or something that's enhanced for our hair and nails. You see this stuff all the time. So why wouldn't beverage be another platform and delivery method for cannabinoids?
Well, and it's an icing on the cake that we have this rapid onset and shorter duration, because that really allows you as the consumer to have a lot more control over your experience. I think there's a lot of hesitation with some people when they are considering an edible and they're like, oh, how's this going to go? Yeah. Talk to me in 6 hours. You really do not need to have that experience with beverages. So their rapid onset, their shorter duration, and their sessionability are really appealing factors. And by sessionability, we really mean that you can have more than one, because you also don't want to just have one drink ever.
No one has one drink.
No one ever has just one drink. You're going to want to have multiple. So being able to stack them, knowing that there's not going to be some huge 6-hour edible bomb coming your way, and you can have more control over that, is really valuable.
Yeah, and when I go to dispensaries and I do the secret shopping, a lot of times you hear from a bud tender that, the difference between beverages and edibles, traditional edibles, are that it hits quick. It's more than that. The onset is early. It's 7, 10, 15 minutes for most consumers. But it's also the offset. Without rounding out that conversation, hits quick to someone new to cannabis. They don't know what hits quick means. Does that mean it's going to hit me like a truck? Is it going to be like that old school edible that I had in college? Like, what does that mean? Yeah. So without finishing and rounding out that conversation about the offset, you really lose half of that, important selling point.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into more of what you can expect from the effects, but let's talk a little bit more about the science We already kind of talked a little bit about this, but Diana is going to walk us through some of the Source technology and tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So at Source Technology, we do water-soluble emulsions, which is essentially how we're able to deliver that quick onset and the consistent offset. We're also known for a really clean flavor profile. The slushies you're having today, the coffee you're having today are all powered by Source. So again, you're getting that clean flavor profile. You can enjoy it just like you would any other drink. This one's just a little healthier for you. But to go back to the science of it, what emulsification means and why you're able to absorb this more quickly. Emulsification process is not new to beverage. There are other ingredients that are emulsified, that are infused into CPG products that we consume all the time. Cannabinoids have proven to be particularly difficult. That process involves breaking down the oil that's extracted from the cannabis plant into microparticles. You'll hear nano emulsification a lot. Nano is just another size. It's a size below micro. Various technologies are used. Not all are the same. Some are nano, some are micro. The onset time, though, is not necessarily dependent on the size of that particle. If it's a water-soluble emulsion, it should be small enough for your intestinal tract to bypass the liver and be absorbed by your intestinal tract. Now,
Does any of that get absorbed in your mouth as well?
Yes, it can. It can get absorbed in your mouth or in your gums. You'll hear a lot of people using sublinguals. Water-soluble sublinguals will do the same sort of experience. Just when we think of beverage, we think of something that you're sipping on, or maybe a shot. Kind of traditional with how you consume all of the other things you would label as beverages. I feel like sublinguals people don't put in the same category, but can use the same technology. The technology itself, once it breaks down those oil particles, is enrobing it to disguise the body from seeing it as an oil. So the idea is we're tricking the body a little bit so that the particles go through and go into your intestinal tract and therefore get absorbed more quickly, allowing for that 7, 10, 15-minute onset time. The way I like to envision the technology itself is like the M&M you see above here. It's an M&M cut in half if you're not looking at the screen. But essentially the emulsion technology is the enrobing. So that outside shell of the M&M, the inside of the M&M is intact, but the outside shell is what's allowing it to go through, your system. And that's kind of a good visual, if you will, for what emulsion technology is.
And this is really important to understand because a lot of people, I think, historically have understood cannabinoids are not water soluble. That's something that people have said over and over, and that's why historically people make butters, people make oils, people make things that can be integrated into chocolates and baked goods because it's a lot easier. The innovation of this technology is really very new. This is very recent that we've had access to this type of product.
Absolutely. And right now we're talking a lot about ready to drink beverages, ready to mix, but there are drink additives out there that are meant to enhance your favorite beverage or meant for you to use as a mixologist at home. So you will have more access to these products in the future. There's definitely variety popping up everywhere. I mean, California, I wouldn't say has the most diverse or variety, if you will, in a dispensary. But if you go to Minnesota, where they have 150 SKUs of infused beverages, I mean, there's something for everyone at this point.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
All right, let's learn more. Let's go back to the science a little bit. I think we kind of already talked through this, but I think one of the other things we really want to mention on bypassing the liver, the reason that people feel the effects of edibles so much is because it is processed through the liver, and that's where the THC converts to a much more potent compound called hydroxy-11 THC. Hydroxy-11 is the reason you go and eat an edible and feel like you're in space. You're not going to get that same effect with the cannabis beverages because the molecules aren't converting by bypassing the liver entirely.
Right. And so you're having that onset time come quickly, but not the extreme intensity that you would have where, I think everyone's had an edible where they're waiting for it to hit and they don't think it's hit. They're like, oh, it didn't work. I must not have gotten anything. They have
another one.
Which is, by the way, never do that. Never do that. If you get the urge, just say no. That might be the only time that phrase is applicable in cannabis anymore. But ultimately, it is, you take that second one, and by the time it hits, it's intense. And that's what keeps you in those 3 to 6 hour experiences. I know from experience, I've eaten a lot of ice cream in those windows. It's not a good feeling. It's not like drinking a refreshing, low-calorie infused drink. But ultimately, I mean, what we need to really focus on is understanding, like, bypassing the liver is a good thing. I think people have always thought everything goes through the liver and is digested. But to get the consistent sessionable onset that you get from beverage, that's slow and low, like I said, where you can actually build upon your high if you want to, and then decide kind of when you're done.
Right.
And when you're done, 45 minutes later, it's working its way out of your system. Right. So you do have an understanding of what the time commitment is.
Yes.
Because I think there's always a concern, well, if I have that edible, I don't know will I be able to drive in 4 or 5 hours?
Right.
And that is eliminated with this technology. And I think that is what makes this category, again, so approachable, is that we're taking out that risk factor, that question.
Totally. And I think also, everyone has a highly individuated endocannabinoid system, so you don't process cannabis the same way I don't process cannabis, and 10 milligrams for you is not 10 milligrams for me.
Right.
So understanding that for edibles and flower is very true, but because we have this increased bioavailability with the nano-emulsified beverages, they do tend to be more consistent across consumer sets, in my experience. I don't know if you have...
It varies. I have some friends that are very high dose consumers, and they're, especially based on the West Coast, you've got a lot of those small 2 ounce, 6 ounce, 100 milligram beverages that people are consuming in one sitting. That's not me. I'm a 2 to 4 milligram person per dose. And I might consume throughout the day, but it's because I'm kind of like hovering at a certain level. When you have those, products that are extremely high dose that people are throwing back, they might be using it for medicinal purposes or different issues, but I have friends that they're consuming 400 milligrams a day.
Right.
And that's just to function. That's not them feeling high. That's them eliminating some other, ailment, if you will, in their body. But for a lot of us, we're not looking for that experience. We don't need that. Our body doesn't need it. So I compare this similarly to when you go to college and you figure out your alcohol tolerance. Everyone needs to understand their tolerance just the same way they would with a medication.
Yes.
When you get a prescription from a doctor, you don't question it. You kind of take it and you're like, yep, they know what they're doing. This is something you really have to know your body, and you have to take that time. And trial and error, I understand, can be something that people don't want to do. And I think cannabis has more nuances than alcohol. And as a result, it does require more trial and error. So you have to kind of know that going in, I think, a little bit. But what's nice, again, about the beverage, if you're starting slow and low, it's a much more fun experience. It's much safer. It's much more controllable. So you can really eliminate that fear that I think a lot of people have when they hear the word edible.
Totally. Very different experience. Okay, so this is a really big one for those of you who can't see the screen. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between cannabis and hemp. Obviously, they're legally approached differently, but really it's the same plant.
Yes, this can be very confusing, and I think, ultimately understanding the plant differences, hemp being nationally legal if it's under 0.3% THC, that's how hemp is defined. Recreational cannabis is a much higher percentage of THC in the plant, and that's how they're differentiated between. So when you hear legal rec market or legal medical market, they're talking about the higher potency THC. When you're hearing about hemp, and right now this is particularly important because I know stores like Erewhon in LA are carrying hemp D9 products. D9 is THC. D9, whether it's hemp derived or cannabis derived, is THC, and it can be intoxicating based on the dose that you consume it at. With hemp being under 0.3% THC, what people have found through the Farm Bill, which legalized hemp, they basically decided that they would take biomass that is 0.3% THC, so legally defined as hemp, and they would distill it down or convert it using a variety of methods into THC. Based on the definition of the Farm Bill and based on dry weight and volume, you can therefore have mostly low-dose Delta-9, hemp Delta-9 products on the market. This has caused confusion, especially if you have people that you've been explaining for a long time what CBD is and that it's non-intoxicating and this comes from the hemp plant and this comes from here. And now they're like, well, wait, what about hemp D9? Is that getting me high? And that can be a very difficult conversation.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing for a consumer to understand is anytime you see D9, whether it's hemp derived or cannabis derived, that is something that can create an intoxicating effect. And I think it's important that everyone understands that. I think it's good from an accessibility standpoint to be bringing attention to these beverages, but it is important that consumers understand what they're consuming and not just seeing hemp and assuming non-intoxicating.
Yeah, and I think that there are a couple of other key important factors to consider. One, from a regulatory standpoint, anything that you're going to buy in a dispensary that's a regulated cannabis product is subject to a variety of really rigorous testing. And the hemp industry is just regulated differently. So those brands and those products will not have to undergo the same testing and provide the same data to back up how they're coming to their dosage, for example. So, a little bit of buyer beware with some, don't go to the gas station and buy hemp-derived THC or hemp-derived CBD. He's like, I just stocked up at Arco.
Gas stations get a bad rep. My Diet Coke from a gas station tastes the same as it does from anywhere else.
Yes, your Diet Coke maybe.
I would say not from the gas station parking lot. I think that's super safe to not buy from.
Yes.
That said, I do think it is true. I mean, while a lot of the Hemp D9 products out there are being made by food and beverage experienced professionals, it's not required.
Right.
There's a lack of tracking. They might be self-regulating, but not every group is going to self-regulate the same.
Yeah.
And I think that understanding where your product's coming from, doing a little homework when it comes to the Hemp D9 side right now, can go a long way and just make you, again, feel more safe about the product you're consuming.
Yeah.
And that is obviously a benefit to a regulated market. It's, that labs had to test it, where the source was, because in a rec or medical market that's legalized in the U.S., they have lab results they have to submit. That product is tracked from seed to sale.
Yeah.
They know exactly where it started from, what it went into, and where it got sold to. Not necessarily who it got sold to. It depends on how you decide to pay, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. If you come in with cash, they're never going to track you down. I think that looking at all of the ways that hemp beverages have really evolved, we saw that start with CBD really strongly a couple years ago, and now we've moved into this very interesting hemp D9 marketplace. I'm here on behalf of the Clever Root, which we just recently relaunched. Please go scan our QR code and pick up a button. But in our launch content, Diana actually wrote an article about her time in Minnesota, where you drank nothing but hemp beverages for 4 days.
I never thought I would be telling people to take a trip to Minnesota in my life. And don't get me wrong, beautiful state, really beautiful summers. But if you had told me, or pretty much anyone else in cannabis, that Minnesota would have been a pioneer state for cannabis, particularly cannabis beverages, there was a lot of words that come to mind, but none of them were, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But that's what we're having right now in Minnesota. Minnesota had some regulation changes last year that legalized hemp D9 beverages to be sold pretty much anywhere. Convenience stores, gas stations, salons, that people were selling them instead of their glass of wine or beer.
Hotels.
You go to restaurants, bars, they're being served next to alcoholic beverages as well, so you have dual consumption happening. Breweries were adding this as a SKU and offering to their taproom guests, also creating ready-to-drink beverages for people to purchase. My hotel, when I checked in, they were selling them at the little market there that usually you go and you get your water and your Diet Pepsi, your Diet Coke, maybe a Coors Light for the room later. They had hemp D9 beverages there, and they were incredibly educated on what the product was and how it worked, which is a crucial part. Education is a huge, crucial part to this category breaking open the can of curious. So to have that experience at the lobby of a hotel when I've been to dispensaries that can't necessarily tell me the difference in experience between gummies and drinks was kind of mind-blowing. And it was hard to leave that market because I am someone who only consumes cannabis through beverage. It was hard for me to go back to a lifestyle where I couldn't get a hemp D9 beverage at a bar instead of like a glass of wine. Because there is something social about drinking out with friends, and I want to participate, but Diet Coke doesn't really do it the same as, a glass of wine or a hemp D9 beverage. It's just not the same.
No.
I feel like being the DD is cool, but, it's not the same. So I definitely, it's a different life there. And it would feel more bizarre there now to not have those offerings on a menu than to have them in everywhere. I mean, they are expected. It is so normalized. And again, that's like a comforting feeling for someone who's been working in the space. And this is a hard space to work in. Cannabis is a hard space to work in general. Beverage has really kind of struggled to break through into that Canna Curious market. And it's because we don't have as many experiences like the one we have here, where everyday consumers who are doing something that they are doing for enjoyment get to learn about cannabis and CBD and sample a beverage. We don't have these experiences that often. We're not able to. California is a great state for that, and Minnesota is showing, in my opinion, what I consider the taste of the future.
Well, and it's also really exciting. Minnesota is going recreational. I think they might already be. Right?
Yes.
They're going very soon. But there are parts all over this country where people don't have access to cannabis still. And so this hemp D9 loophole has actually allowed a lot of people to order inebriating cannabis to their home in Texas, in parts of the country where there are still these prohibitive regulations stopping people. So I think we here in California are very spoiled. We can all walk into a dispensary and go get a high quality tested product, but we have to recognize that there are parts of this country where people don't have that access. So it's really exciting that people in Minnesota and brands all across the country are taking advantage of this loophole to categorize, to grow this category.
And it was particularly important for beverage, because with beverage, we know that the future of this particular space is really not the existing cannabis consumer. Someone who's looking for high dose THC, a majority of our future business in the beverage category is low dose sessionable products, things that are replacing your beer at a barbecue. If you go to a restaurant, you're going to have a few at dinner, and like I said, their onset's going to be quick, and in an hour it's going to be leaving your system, so you can continue to consume, not just have a one and done. The beverage category right now, due to regulations in many states, even legal rec markets, doesn't allow for them to get the exposure in front of someone that this might be a product of interest, but they would never smoke or get a flower. They don't know that space anymore, and maybe they're just not interested. They don't think it's for them.
Right.
And this is an opportunity, again, experiences like this, having a CBD bar here and being able to answer questions of just everyday consumers kind of curious about what products are out there that they might really like.
Yeah.
This is a rare opportunity, and Minnesota has really busted that open, and it's created a case study for us to show people this is a state that was a drinking state. I mean, they brew beer, and they're not shy about it. And this was an opportunity for the brewers to get behind this category. So now you have alcohol and cannabis working together. You have brewers who are experienced beverage manufacturers producing products and high quality products. They all taste so good.
Yeah.
And then you have the fact that, we have this brewer manufacturing this product. I know their beer's pretty good. That beverage just became so much more approachable for them because they know who's making it.
Right.
And I think ultimately that full story is what's getting the traction in Minnesota. But of course, we want to show the social implications, the revenue implications that benefit that state and the people working in that space. That's a thriving market, whereas right now, a lot of the cannabis market is very much a hang in there, top type of space. Yeah, hold on tight. Don't let go.
Yeah. Well, and I think from the benefits, from a revenue perspective, one of the most interesting things is you mentioned that restaurants and bars are seeing huge increases in revenues from people who are not only ordering these cannabis drinks, but they're also ordering more food.
Yeah, more appetizers and more desserts.
Yeah, shocker.
Yeah, it's funny because that makes so much sense. If you've ever heard about the munchies, this very much falls in line. They noticed that the overall tabs were bigger, and they also were able to sell these beverages to go in like 4-packs, basically being a reseller for these brands. So that added a whole other stream of revenue for them. People were leaving, be like, I'm going to take some of these home with me. And obviously good for brand awareness. Yeah. Overall, this has been really great category awareness for beverage in general. The conversation around infused beverages is changing. I now live in Virginia, which goes rec next year. And people are approaching me when I have my hemp D9 beverages going, hey, is that the cannabis drink I've heard about? So instead of it being me pushing and explaining to these people what it is, they're coming to me because the awareness is up, because they're able to see these products being consumed in other markets. The media's picked up on this, and there's a lot more attention to the other benefits going on in Minnesota. So it's been really exciting to see. I mean, this is definitely a year for beverage. Whether it's the year, I'm not sure, but it's definitely, we're having a moment, and people are much more aware than ever about the opportunity to have infused beverages.
Yeah, and it's pretty exciting to actually see that surprisingly come driven through the hemp space.
Correct.
Who had that on their bingo card?
Along with Minnesota.
Exactly. All right, let's see what's next. Oh, well, we've already been talking a little bit about what the future looks like, but a couple of things I want to bring back here to California. We've talked a lot about the idea of having a beverage hospitality moment here and what it's like when you as a consumer can walk in and ask somebody questions, do some live sampling. For me, that's the future, in addition to obviously increased manufacturing and regulations that will allow these businesses to survive. But how can we develop that here in California and then nationally?
Yeah, well, I think a big part of that is leveraging case studies like Minnesota, showing what's working. And look, that market's going to go through growing pains. It's not perfect either. And if you talk to the people there, they'll tell you that there are certain regulations and things that do still kind of hinder their ability to do business and scale on a larger level. And ultimately, we can take things that are working there. There's probably some things from here that they'd like to take over there. So I think it's really about taking a look at what's going on in each of the markets, learning from that experience, also learning from prohibition and things that worked and didn't work back then, and figuring out how to really regulate this, because at the end of the day, this is about making sure the products for the consumer are safe. Regulation is only bad if it's done poorly, and I think ultimately, using Minnesota, we can come up with regulations that allow for safe products for the consumer, but again, also for these businesses to be able to scale and continue to grow versus just keeping afloat. And I think that, the technology is getting better every day. I mean, that's just a matter of the market and what happens in food and bev. There's always someone trying to improve the quality of the product for the consumer, and that's a good thing. So ultimately, we are going to see more varieties come out. We are going to see stick packs in powder form. I mean, there are already some out there, particularly on the Hemp D9 side, but there's room for different types of methods of delivery, even within beverage. So it's not just ready to drink. We're going to see a lot more options and variety for consumers so that we can start blending ourselves into everyone's everyday routine. And it doesn't mean that cannabis has to be for everyone, but it's about creating products that can work for anyone's routine.
Well, and going back to Minnesota again, isn't that the dream, where you can walk into a bar and your friend can order a glass of wine and you can order a cannabis beverage, and maybe you can have a glass of wine and a cannabis beverage if you're comfortable with that. I think that that really is the dream for this category in particular. There are a lot of benefits in terms of on-site consumption to beverages. We don't have to worry about smoke. We don't have to worry about some of the more pollutant things that are going to maybe be hindrances for other categories.
Absolutely. I mean, we're not going back to when restaurants are going to allow smoking sections. We're not going there. It's not happening. But there's no reason that cannabis, alcohol, food, entertainment can't all live under one umbrella. I mean, we're looking at it under one roof here in many ways with the CBD, but ultimately they can all live together and work together. And that just means there's more offerings and accessibility to consumers.
And it's really just about education. So if you guys have any questions and want to know more, and you don't have the access to a bud tender, find the right resources. Visit thecleverroot.com and find out how you can take advantage of this very exciting category, because it is new and there are a lot of questions, and we understand that, but we want to normalize, and I think beverages are such an effective tool to do that.
And you bring up a great point. I mean, there is so much content out there, and if you're not already working in the cannabis space like you and I are, it can be very difficult to find a trusted resource.
Yes.
I mean, I remember my dad, after I worked in cannabis for at least 3 years, saying that he was finally going to try CBD because it had been in Men's Health. I had never been more offended and more happy all at the same time, because he needed the CBD and I knew it would be good for him. But I was also like, what about the last 3 years of me telling you about CBD? And he kind of looked at me and joked like, well, you ignored me for the first 18 years of your life, so it's fine. Shame on me, I guess. That's payback. But ultimately, I do think that having places like the Clever Root where people can learn about products that fit their lifestyle and find a platform that speaks to them and their lifestyle, not just a cannabis platform, because that's not necessarily geared towards the canna curious. It's oftentimes very much geared towards the existing cannabis consumer. And so the information you're going to find there may not answer your question. Whereas when you're dealing with the Clever Root, which the Cannabis Beverage Association supports very much, it's where you're going to find that information. Right. And it's, as a consumer, and this is partially why I became so passionate about the cannabis space in general, it was hard for me to get the information I needed. And I do a lot of trial and error, but I consider myself a human guinea pig. I'll try anything 3 times to figure out if it's right for me. Not everyone's like that. Right. So it's important that beverage makes a first good impression. I mean, the slushy stand and the coffee is a great example of that. It's a great first impression if you haven't had it before, and then it gets you really curious. Now you're more than canna curious. Yeah. You're super canna curious. I don't know, we're gonna level up.
No, at that point you're full in.
You're in.
The conversion to beverages happens really quickly because I think one of the things we haven't talked about, but is very much a broader trend, is that people are drinking less alcohol.
Yes.
And so people who might want to still take the edge off, and whether that's CBD or THC or Delta-9, wherever you're getting this, they don't want to have alcohol. They still want to have something. So this really taps into that consumer set too.
And it can be low sugar. It can be, again, you're not committing yourself to hours. You won't have a hangover. Yeah. So there's a lot of benefits to, this is a healthier alternative and still getting something if you have the THC in there. You're still getting that buzz, that high. And I will say the other difference, I think, in consuming alcohol versus cannabis, when you hit a certain level of high, you don't crave more the way you do with alcohol. I am that person with my wine where it's I'll get to a point where I'm like, oh, my glass is empty. I have to refill it. I just can't have the empty glass. But when you're drinking cannabis and you get to a point where you feel good, you don't have that craving oh, I need more to maintain this. You're good.
It's mindful consumption.
Yes, it is very mindful. And that's why it's consume responsibly. I'm it's a lot easier to do. Yeah. And it keeps you accountable. You know where you feel. You're very much in your body, which I feel like with alcohol, you're kind of not in your body.
You've left the building.
Beer goggles.
You're in a different place entirely when you've had too much wine.
Yeah. And yes, at least I am.
Well, we're speaking from experience here. Well, I think that, all of these exciting things, this is the perfect segue to make. Yeah. This is our first public announcement about this. This is something that Diana and I and the Cannabis Media Council, I don't know if Joyce has made her way into the hall yet, but raise a hand if you have, Joyce. But we are very excited to make an announcement about really the Cannabis Beverage Holiday that we're inviting you all to join in and help us make 820 a thing. Diana, what is 820?
So you guys can totally call me Gretchen Wieners if you want to for the rest of the day, because this is my equivalent to making fetch happen. A few years ago when I started working at Source, I was, 420's always been a thing. Everyone's aware of 420. And then there was 710, which is the oil and concentrate wax holiday. And it's oil flipped in capital letters, upside down, flipped around, something like that, but it makes a 710.
You have to be very stoned to understand it.
I'm sober and I still don't always understand it. I can see it and I can't all at once. And I thought if they can make that a day, beverage can have a day. So I went with 820, and the reason 820 came from is, we're talking about water-soluble cannabinoids and the benefits of those that are coming through beverage. So I thought H2O, that's the number one ingredient in all beverages is water. So I thought, okay, we'll start there. I'm we already got the 20. The 20's there, so it's okay, we're going to rhyme with 420. We'll go with this. And I was well, how am I going to make this work? And I was H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. So we have 820 from H2O, and August 20th is a particularly great day for beverages because most places in the U.S., it's hot, and you're going to want a beverage. And you don't have to step away and heat anything up. You can have something on ice ready to go. So we are, announcing today that we are making a campaign to bring attention to cannabis beverages. And we want everyone to participate on August 20th by consuming your favorite infused beverage. So THC, CBD, any minor cannabinoid, terpenes, we're here for it. It's about bringing attention to this category and the opportunity that sits within it.
Yeah, and it's a really exciting thing to make this a thing because, there is so much variety from all the minor cannabinoids and the terpenes. And, finished final products, or you can make drinks at home. That's something we're going to be talking about a little bit more in the next session, but that's also a thing. So making 820 part of the cannabis cultural lexicon is really exciting, and we've got a great campaign rolling out that's going to pick up on the I'm High Right Now campaign. So you'll be high on some cannabis beverages this August 20th.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to making this a thing. But also, again, like I said, we're having a moment for beverage, and I want to build off that momentum, build off that in Minnesota, and continue to get in front of regulators as well as politicians about making sure the accessibility of these products doesn't go away and showing the demand for this category. Because I think ultimately this is very different than a lot of the other consumption. The future of where we see beverage being and compared to flower and vapes, just knowing that we're not going back to when they're smoking in restaurants. Let's continue to build on that and showcase communities that have embraced it and how they're doing it. So we want every state that can participate legally. I want to make sure it's very clear. I want everyone to be able to participate. Whoever can participate does, and brings attention to the fact that they like beverages and they want them to stay.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely going to have some 820 parties. If you want to sign up, I'm in LA. I'm going to be working on a couple. I'm sure there's going to be a few more around. So mark your calendars, August 20th. It's going to be here in just a few weeks. Definitely make sure you have a plan to have a cannabis beverage in hand. It's a Sunday, so have a party.
Yeah, it's a Sunday. I mean, you can do the real lazy Sunday, kind of like I'm going to chill all day, or throw a party, or you could have the Saturday night party and at midnight take it off like New Year's.
There you go. And you know what? You will not be hungover.
No,
you will wake up feeling fresh as a daisy. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, I think that's it, unless anyone has any questions. There's nobody here. But if you do have questions, please come find me at the Clever Root booth, and find Diana, and check out the Cannabis Beverage Association if you are looking for some resources, and of course the Clever Root for some more educational opportunities and info. And thank you, Diana. Thank you, California State Fair, for having us.
Yes, thank you guys so much for having us. Hope you guys all enjoy the CBD slushies, and hope you guys find some more of those in time for 820.
Yes, happy 820 early, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.